Good afternoon, I'm Pete, this is the Restoration Station and it's Wednesday the 24th of March 2021. In today's video, the third video, I'm going to be talking about the cement render, the very hard cement render that has been applied to this traditional brick and lime mortar building, I believe inappropriately, and looking at some of the problems it's potentially causing. In my first and second video I talked about some really severe damp issues on the inside. Spring has sprung, so the weather is absolutely perfect for doing this. I'm going to show you some of the tools that I'm using, some of the techniques, some of the challenges that I'm facing. So here we are at the back of the house, and you can see that cement render has been applied to this section of the building. I've worked out that there's about 19 square metres here, and in actual fact I've done a bit of a test area just to see what I'm dealing with, and this is some of the hardest cement render that I've ever encountered, and I've not encountered that much. Now I don't know whether this was added because somebody liked the look of it, or whether because there were damp issues and they thought that this might help waterproof the building and make it less prone to damp, but I believe it's had the opposite effect, trapping water behind where the building is supposed to be able to breathe, and has exacerbated any damp problems. There are quite a few cracks in the walls. That's obviously allowing rainwater in, which is getting trapped behind, and that is compounding any problem of moisture that's already trapped in the walls. If I show you inside the house very quickly, just inside this area of cement render, you can see there's some damp and damaged plasterboard down here, and again on this side of the interior kitchen wall you can see there's some terrible damp here. Now this is as I bought the house, I've not done anything to it, and I'll be exposing what's going on behind there a little bit later on in this video, just so that you can see as I find things out for myself. There's another area of building that is rendered directly on the opposite side, so I'll take you around there quickly and show you what's going on there. And here we are on the other side of the building, and as you can see there's more of this white render, again with lots of cracks in, and the paint that's been put over the top on both sides appears to be a waterproof impermeable paint. And what's happening is there are lots of bubbles where the water's getting caught behind, and in actual fact if I press on this, I don't know if you can see this, but there's water actually trapped in these bubbles behind and leaking out. And there's probably about 25 square metres on this side, about 19 or so square metres on the other side of the building, so I've got about 45 square metres of this render in total to remove. Now let's head back over the other side and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. My trusty Titan SDS drill, which I've done about 4 house renovations with, and it refuses to die. It's an absolute workhorse, brilliant. The main tool that I'm going to be using is an Armeg Scotch chisel. And then what you do is you slot these combs in. I've used this one comb just to do that test area there, and what I can show you is just how much it wears these down. I don't know if you can see that, but you've probably used about sort of 2 or 3 mil, something like that, off the off the depth of it. So you can really see how it degrades those combs. The combs are double-sided. What you do is you slot it into the chisel there, you use one side, then when it's run out you swap it over. Although I haven't tried swapping it yet, and I imagine that it's really wedged in there because it holds it pretty tight, and as the hammer action pounds the comb deeper into the channel, it becomes harder and harder to get out the more you use it. This is an Armeg SDS mortar rake, tungsten carbide tips, and it's shaped so that you can get into the mortar slots. I've got a standard SDS chisel here, and also a sort of tile remover bit as well, and to be honest the standard SDS chisel and the tile bit I haven't found that useful. I tend to find, because this cement render is so hard, they tend to bounce along a bit. This Scotch chisel is the best tool that I've found so far, because it sort of shears the cement render off much like shearing a sheep. The only issue that it has is that it does leave a kind of pattern on the brickwork. What I'm hoping I can get away with is, once it's been repointed with lime, I might be able to use a thick lime wash or even a breathable masonry paint, and maybe the pattern in the bricks will lend some character. I don't know, it might look terrible, it might be quite charming, I'm not sure yet. The first thing that I'm going to show you is removing some of the render from the face of these bricks using the Scotch chisel. pretty well welded onto the bricks there. The render is in two parts. You've got the softer outer finish coat, and then you've got the tougher scratch coat, base coat, and that's the bit that's really hard to get off. What I'll show you now as well is the SDS mortar rake and how I go between the joints. Okay, so this is the SDS mortar rake. And again, as you can see, quite hard going, but actually that's probably my favourite of the two tools to use, because it has a habit of popping some of the stuff off the face as well. Now, it's nigh on impossible to do this without damaging some of the arises, the corners or the edges of the bricks. Just because the render is so hard, you have to use quite aggressive tooling to actually remove it. Just for the sake of completeness, I thought I would show you what it's like using the tile removing bit. I'm not going to use the standard SDS chisel because it's a bit narrow and tends to dig into the bricks, and I don't want to damage them. What I want to try and do is take the mortar off the face. Right, so what I found is that even though in places it takes off larger sections than the Scotch chisel, it's more work to actually clean the bricks back. So just to show you a little close-up, having raked out the joints, it takes it down about 25 to 30 mil using that rake, and that is the ideal depth for repointing, roughly twice as deep as the joint is high or wide. By good fortune, going down that deep, I hit the lime mortar again ready for repointing, so that's a real stroke of good luck. I'll show you the repointing in a later video. I'm going to just tidy this up properly so that this small section is finished, and then just crack on. I'm going to start with the lower half first, so everything up to about this door height across, and then the same on the other side because it seems the lower part of the walls is the worst affected. Take you back inside and show you this plaster. Okay, so this is a bit of a voyage of discovery for me as well. This is exactly as I bought the house, and I'm just going to have a quick look and see what's behind this damaged plaster here, so you get to find out just as I do. Wow. Look at that. I don't know what that is. I mean, that looks like salt crystals to me. There seems to be an awful lot of salt bloom coming out of some of these bricks because they've been so damp. Yeah, look at that. So the plasterboard is completely degraded. Salt bloom on the underside. I'm not sure. I think that is still plasterboard, so we'll take a bit more off. Wow, this is just handfuls of damp, crumbly. It's soggy. I mean, look, it's like paste. It's so wet. Just here, this is all the failed bricks that have just fallen down and accumulated, wow, behind the plasterboard, behind the skirting. It's like taking a handful of sand on a wet beach. Right, and if I go a little bit further along as well, and I just take off this bit of skirting board, just because I figured I might as well just knock it back and take off all this bottom layer. You can see the whole bottom of this wall is just full. Sorry for the bad camera work, but look. This is just shovelfuls of wet brick dust, old plasterboard. Good times. So I thought you might just want to see what has been revealed, having cleared all that crud out. You've obviously got very rotten ends of these stud timbers which have just been sat in wet earth. You've got roots growing up the wall and behind this visqueen sheet which has been laid onto the earth, some hardcore put on top of it I can feel, and then about a 50mm thick either concrete or cement sand screed laid on top. So it really does highlight that all of this is going to have to come out. We have a 40-litre bucket, 2/3 full of mostly brick dust, so about another sort of 15 or so kilos of dust that was just trapped in the cavity behind that plasterboard. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Please do like and subscribe. Any questions, chuck them in the comment section below. The next video is going to be probably about installing some rafter ties, and I'll be doing that to stabilise the roof in between getting on with cutting out all of this cement render. I will see you in my next video. Take care.